Welcome to Couch Quarterbacks. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Couch Quarterbacks podcast. I'm Andrew Rochford, and with me, as always, is Ben Steinberg. Ben, say hello to everybody watching.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Couch Quarterbacks. I am your co-host for the day, Ben Steinberg, and I'm excited to be here, Roach. Another great week of football.
Yeah, another week in the books, Stein. We just get closer and closer to the end of the season. It's just a kind of bittersweet that we get another week of football, but it just means we're 1 week closer to the end.
It's flying by, Roach. Honestly, this season, I could remember the first week. I did college game day for week 0 and back in August, and
now you're doing college game day for the SEC championship game.
And shout outs to Alabama beating our favorite team, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia did make it in the top 4. It's going to be interesting playoff matchup. I think the 2-3 matchup of not Maryland,
Michigan.
I knew it was an M state versus Georgia will be an awesome battle, and then Alabama versus Cincinnati will probably be that.
Cincinnati should just be happy to be there. The first non-Power 5 team.
I heard it today. Some guys said that Cincinnati broke the glass ceiling for Power 5 or Group of 5 schools. So
I don't know if there's going to be another one with still a 14 playoff. Maybe if they expand, you might start to see them in there regularly.
Houston's had a case, and teams like Houston have had cases in the past. Maybe like a Boise State from
Coastal
years
Carolina
ago.
last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, just years ago, but I mean,
everything kind of fell right this year with so many big teams losing that it just kind of made it where they could kind of slide into a back end spot.
Yeah, speaking of sliding into back end spots, with the playoff expansion in the NFL, so many teams are in the hunt right now. There's the graphic that they're showing in the hunt. It's just gross how many teams are in it that shouldn't be in it.
You start to get teams that are
NFC.
3 games under 500.
Yeah, especially in the NFC. AFC is a little bit different, a little bit more even. Where the NFC is just top heavy the
NFC is very top heavy in terms of having the top teams like the Cardinals and the Packers. But then the AFC, all the division leaders are 8-4, but you have so many teams that are also 7-5, 7-6, 6-6.
Yeah,
so.
And it's the funny thing. The only team that's been mathematically eliminated is the Lions after yesterday. Unfortunately,
how crazy is that? They won the game and they got mathematically eliminated.
Exactly. It's upsetting, but the fact of the matter is the second worst team, which by record wise is Seattle, is actually I forgot their record is, but they are within contention at number 15.
They're still mathematically in it. They won yesterday.
They're at 15th. They're one game separates them from a playoff, or 1 or 2 games separate them from a playoff spot.
Yeah, that's what someone actually had going into this week before we actually get into the games. They had mapped out where I guess the Lions weren't mathematically eliminated before this week, but there was 8 scenarios each week that needed to happen for the Lions to be able to make it into the playoffs. So obviously one of those scenarios didn't end up going through, so the Lions end up getting eliminated. But I'm sure they're happy to just get their first victory of the season. We'll get to that game in a little bit, but we'll hop through all the games on Sunday. Start out with a game that you were actually in attendance for, Stein.
Yes.
And that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, this game really didn't have a lot of, I would say, gaffes by either team. It was pretty closer than the final score would say.
It was 20-17 at halftime. The Falcons had a pick 6 on Brady's one blemish of the game, just making that pass right before halftime to allow Marlon Davidson to get the pick 6 and make it a 3-point ball game.
Yeah, Falcons did kind of fall flat in the second half. There was a fumble, just some bad looks, a few botched snaps as well, and then just probably the biggest blemish for them was 5 sacks on Matt. Vita Vea feasted. Just those guys were able to get to Matt and just make him taste turf all day.
I saw a lot of tweets on Sunday when I was going back through. Of course, a lot of people I follow are Falcons fans, and so they're retweeting a bunch of Falcons stuff. And
it's
pretty much the offensive line was a big thing.
Same old song and dance. I'm so tired of people complaining about the offensive line.
Jalen Mayfield, I mean,
he wasn't even. I think it's not him. It's just an entire overall effort by the offensive line. But that's such a tired talking point for the Falcons that we've had offensive line since fucking 2011. Excuse my language, okay? But it's like,
what's the last good like offensive lineman the Falcons have had besides like Jake Matthews, like that they've actually drafted and that's panned out?
Todd McClure, like the center back in like those 2010 teams. I guess the best guy we had. But I mean, props to the Bucs. I think they just overall outplayed the overmatched Falcons. Brady was just great.
I was gonna say, I mean, the crazy thing was that all they did was just pass the whole time. Like
Leonard Fournette wasn't even used as like much as he was the week prior.
That's what the first drive they had like 13 straight passes to like start out the ball game. End up getting a Leonard Fournette receiving touchdown on it. Brady threw the ball 51 times compared to they just ran the ball 17 times. So they were basically just using like short passes to end up as their run game because Godwin had 15 catches in this ball game. Mike Evans 7 catches. Gronk had a couple of touchdowns, so they were still able to get their playmakers the ball. Leonard Fournette, 7 catches as well. They were able to get it to the best guys on their team, but they just really didn't use a rushing attack, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, Godwin was a PPR nightmare for a lot of people.
Franchise record 15 catches.
Yeah, just was peppering. Really wasn't like a super deep pass. But again, just a lot of like little tiny goofs for the Falcons. Like there was one that really stuck out to me. Falcons had the ball. There was a in their red zone penalty for the Buccaneers, half the distance to the goal. Put the Falcons basically on the 1 yard line with three tries. Literally, first try, incomplete pass. All right, let's try to run it in. Second try,
that was the Matt Ryan bobbled snap.
Falls on it. Third thing, I think another incomplete pass.
It was another incomplete pass, yeah.
Then you had to
a 21-yard field goal from Youngway.
Yeah, which is it's just a sad, and it's just stuff like that. I think
it's also things like that. When you're playing the Bucs, you pretty much need to have a flawless football game, and you need touchdowns in that situation.
I still don't think this Bucs team is as good as advertised. I think they just played a weak Falcons team overall. I think that push comes to shove, I think the Bucs would still get bullied by some teams. Mm-hmm. I don't want, that might just be my anti-Brady bias coming out, but
I mean, I think you're kind of right though, because they really have shown like some signs of being beatable. I mean, it could be kind of like that LeBron situation where it's like, beat him in the regular season, just let him get into the playoffs, and then you saw it last year with them getting in as a wild card team and then running the table to Super Bowl. So it might be that kind of thing, because I mean, they've got a commanding lead in the division. All the other teams are 5-7. So
yeah, and everyone's trending in the wrong direction.
They pretty much locked up the South. I think they play the Panthers 2 times. Yeah. They have the Saints once again.
Panthers actually fired their OC, Joe Brady.
I saw
that was surprising.
Yeah, that was some very surprising news.
The Panthers were on bye.
They were on bye this past week.
We can mention them real quickly. I mean, this game we've already kind of gone over ad nauseum, but
as much as you want to talk about it, right?
Yeah, but Joe Brady getting fired, and a guy who's maybe about 10 years, 15 years older than us.
Yeah, but the thing that's so surprising about that is, like, you had the great start for them. They went 3-0. Like, Darnold was playing great. You saw him fall off. Christian McCaffrey's been in and out of the lineup pretty much this whole season now. So it's kind of interesting, like, why they would do that when he really hasn't been set up in a great situation to succeed just because of injuries and stuff.
I mean, they have had decent.
I mean, this was a second season?
Yeah, second season, and it was kind of him and Rule were kind of be that new regime for them, and he's out, but I'm sure like he'll land on his feet. There's a lot of coaching vacancies around college football, coordinator vacancies as well. So I think best place for him would probably be coordinator. Get his feet back under him. I would say
maybe get back into college, get into the coordinator ranks, and then maybe become a college head coach. You've seen how many different places have been open in terms of head coaching positions, so assume it might be the same way next season also.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next game. That was our NFC South bubble.
Yeah.
Because the Saints also played on Thursday night, so we're now done with the
there we go. Cross that division off. We got 7 more to go.
Yeah. So the Cardinals traveled to Chicago to take on the Bears, and the Cardinals defense was the story of the game with 4 picks on the Bears.
Yeah, Andy Dalton, I mean. the Bears better hope Justin Fields' ribs are fine for next week's game, because
and he's not much of
an upgrade. But Andy Dalton in this one, 2 touchdowns, one of them in garbage time, 4 interceptions. He got sacked 3 times. Really, all the interceptions were his fault, too. There's maybe one of them that Cole Kmet caught and then fell down, and the ball popped up in the air and ends up going to the Cardinals' corner. Jakeem Grant was the leading receiver. No Allen Robinson in this ball game. Darnell Mooney got locked up. So a guy that joined your team halfway through the season, that's your leading guy. Definitely not a recipe for success. There were one bright spot for the Bears. David Montgomery, 21 carries, 90 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. Then also had 8 receptions. It was a very wet and windy game, so just a lot of checkdowns, a lot of run work in this ball game. So David Montgomery, the lone bright spot for the Bears offense.
Yeah, an unlucky week 13. A lot of these games had bad weather.
Yeah, we're getting into obviously early December now. We're checking out the Monday Night Football preview where it just looks awful out there in Buffalo. So windy.
Yeah, so windy. There's flurries. There's ice on the field, like solid pieces of ice. So just not great conditions. And similar situation in Chicago. The Cardinals really keeping it on the ground. Only 11 passing attempts for Kyler.
Yeah, Kyler, first game action since week 8. Him and DeAndre Hopkins both back in the lineup.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of like easing him back in, you could really say.
Yeah, and then also just with the conditions as well, they were leading for the majority of this ball game, so not really needing to use Kyler's arm much in the ball game. He had just 123 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. The big thing I like for my fantasy team also, 10 carries for 59 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So you saw early on in this season, maybe he had gotten that ankle injury kind of early on and was playing through it because he wasn't really using his legs much, wasn't really used much as a runner. So it's nice to see that in his first game back from the ankle injury. Hopefully he continues that. DeAndre Hopkins, like I said, was back as well. He caught a touchdown pass on a 4th down play on their first drive of the ball game. Just 2 catches for 32 yards and a touchdown, but there was no receiver for the Cardinals that had more than 2 catches.
Yeah, but Kyler, I mean, numbers like that, even though the passing numbers weren't there, running the ball, 4 touchdowns total, if this guy's been playing the entire year, I think you could put him in the conversation for MVP.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, though, he was injured, so I think that's really going to ultimately go against him. James Conner, though, was also great running the ball, 20 carries for 75 yards and taking a receiving touchdown.
It was a pretty nice receiving touchdown. I don't know if you saw it, but it was on a 3rd down play, and he kind of reached out. I think he caught it with one hand, and the Bears corner kind of dove for him, and he just shifted out of the way and then just skirted up the sideline for like a 20-yard touchdown catch.
I know how much you haven't liked James Conner, but I've been a big fan of him on Arizona.
Well, the biggest reason I've hated him is because, he's like 2nd in the league in touchdowns to Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
And it's because he was stealing all those touchdowns down in the goal line from Kyler Murray, and I even had Chase Edmonds early on in the season before I traded him away, so he was stealing them from him as well. So that was really the biggest reason why I hated James Conner.
He got some touchdowns back.
Yeah, at least he finally got that. Like I said, I should be able to win in the league that I have him in fantasy with that performance. But the Cardinals moved to 10-2 on the season.
First team at double-digit wins. Mm-hmm. Awesome for them. And have a great game coming up, too.
Yeah, that's what. One more thing. They're 7-0 on the road this season, Stein, and all their victories are by double digits. So
really, going back to last game real quickly, the Falcons are like 0-something at home.
The Falcons haven't won a home game since like November of 2020.
Technically, they won a home game, but it was in London.
Yeah, they haven't won a game in Mercedes-Benz. Yeah. But yes, a very exciting game next week for the Cardinals. Monday Night Football. We'll be sitting here recording Week 14 recap and watching that as they have a home matchup against the LA Rams.
Yeah, and then they go to the Lions, which I think is a winnable game, and then a Colts on Christmas Day, which
that will be another good game.
A low-key good matchup. At the beginning of the season, you probably wouldn't think as much, but right now, both teams playing really well down the stretch. Bears, even though they aren't eliminated, they're pretty much eliminated.
Yeah, at 4-8, I think they're the same record now as the Seahawks in the NFC, so one of the worst teams down there. So they're going to need a lot of things to go right to make it into a wild card, but it might just be better off for them to just chalk up this season.
Yeah, and Nagy's job, I think we can officially say, is done. They're not going to fire him in the middle of the season, but they're going to fire him at the end. I'm predicting.
I 100% agree with you, Stein. But let's move on to the next game, a battle of now 7-5 teams, as the Chargers beat the Bengals 41-22. And this was we didn't get to talk about it because we didn't have a preview show, but this is probably 2 of the toughest teams to gauge, I'd say, week to week.
I concur.
Just because like you have the highs and lows of each of them, where like the Bengals, they have 4 wins by 19 or more points this season, but then they also have a 25-point loss to the Browns. They lost to the Jets, and then they lose this game by 19 points. And the Chargers have had a bunch of close games this season where they've had some heartbreakers, won some close ones against some good teams. So both these teams are very tough to gauge. Like I went very back and forth in my pick of this ball game.
Yeah, are you impressed at how quick I did that math? Subtracted 21, 20. 22 from 41.
Good job. You passed. You passed third grade.
I did really well with that. I'm really impressed with myself. So just let me have that moment.
There you go. I'll give you the nice gold star.
Roach, I completely agree with you that these two teams, you can make a case for them being really good, but you can also make a case for them being like really bad.
And the Chargers started out the season like 3-0, then they lost like 3 or 4. Justin Herbert played awful in this game, and what made it even better is in this ball game, the Chargers were up 24-0. The Bengals make a huge comeback with Joe Burrow playing with a dislocated pinky.
Yeah.
They make it a 24-22 ball game, and then the Chargers outscore Cincinnati 17-0 in the fourth quarter. That's how you get your final score.
Yeah, and then for the unfortunately for the Bengals, Joe, despite a decent effort, was just not fully healthy. That dislocated pinky looked extremely painful.
That's what I saw. Some pictures of it. Like, it was just like double the size of it. They tried to like tape it to his other finger. You could see him grimacing on the sideline trying to like throw and get comfortable.
Anyone who's thrown with a dislocated finger playing like backyard football, you guys know how that feels.
Exactly.
I'm sure it's not fun. Or throwing a baseball even.
I mean, credit to him for being able to gut it out, because that happened very early in the ball game. I don't remember if it was their first series, but I'm almost positive it was in the first quarter. So to be able to play through that, I mean, stats-wise, didn't have an amazing performance, but ended up throwing for 300 yards.
Yeah, and overall, there was a bunch of turnovers for the Bengals.
7 total turnovers in the ball game.
Yeah, and for the Bengals especially, really ruined them. Mixon with I don't know if you can call it a bad game, 19 of 54 and a touchdown.
I would say a bad game for like his standards.
And the way he's been playing, going against the Chargers' rush
pretty
defense,
much the worst rush defense in the league.
Yeah, this was probably everyone's like start of the week, because Mixon's been hotter than a forest fire, and you're going against a terrible rush defense. But he comes in and pretty much disappoints overall.
Yeah, I mean, he had a rushing touchdown to really save his fantasy performance, but the big backbreaker was the fumble he lost in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Ends up getting scoop and scored. The Chargers get the touchdown
also
on it.
Also changed the momentum of the game.
Yeah, really it was 24-22 when it happened, so change it to a 2-possession ball game after that, and that, like I said, the Bengals didn't end up scoring at all in the second half, or at all at that point in the ball game, so.
Yeah. Also for the Bengals, T. Higgins had himself a day receiving. Love that. As soon as I pick him up in fantasy through trade, 9 catches for 138 and a touchdown. Tyler Boyd was second best with 5 for 85. And then Jamar Chase quieting down again, 5 for 52.
Could have had a much bigger day, but early in the ball game, he ended up almost having one of his patented like 70-yard touchdown catches on a fly pattern. But he had to step on his defender. He bobbled the ball, and it popped up in the air, and it caused for a Joe Burrow interception. So it went from him having the high of a 70-yard touchdown to the ball ends up getting intercepted for a turnover.
But Bengals fans, don't be afraid. You guys have had so much growth this year. Currently, they sit at the 7th seed in the AFC.
Yeah, the Bengals weren't even supposed to be a playoff team this year. They were predicted to be last in their division again.
Supposed to be last, maybe win 4 or 5 games, but really have surprised. And right now, they are fighting their lives for a wild card spot.
Yeah, last team in there right now.
Which potentially could happen. The AFC North has just been a slugfest, and we continue to see it. We'll get into the Ravens when we get to them.
They've got a tough back end to their schedule.
And the Browns. Browns were on bye too, right?
Mm-hmm, yep. But that's what they got, a tough back end to their schedule. They play the 49ers, Broncos, Ravens, Chiefs, and Browns. If I'm not mistaken, all those teams are 500 or better.
Yeah, and that Niners team can be sneaky good.
They've been great of late, even though they lost yesterday.
And you haven't even played at the Browns, and then going to the Broncos is always a challenge.
I would say that's especially a tough last 3 games. Ravens, Chiefs, and Browns. You got 2 of them at home, but definitely going to be some tough tests for the Bengals. Let's flip over to the team that won, the Chargers. Justin Herbert having a great game, 300 yards passing. He had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Mike Williams finally having a good game. He's really cooled off of late. 5 catches for 110 yards.
Yep.
And then Keenan Allen, 5 catches, 34 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter.
If only those touchdowns could have gone to Mike Williams, it would have made his fantasy day that much better.
Even better.
Yeah, but Allen, you can't discount too. And some information on Keenan Allen comes out today, placed on the COVID-19 list, so his status is in jeopardy for next weekend.
I think he would pretty much just need to be vaccinated to get the 2 negative tests, and he'd be out 5 days. So with it coming on Monday, I think he if he was vaccinated, could play on Sunday. But yeah, the odds are not looking good for him to be out there next week for the Chargers.
Austin Eckler, though, another decent performance, 14 for 59 and a touchdown, and also played really well receiving the ball, but did lose 2 fumbles overall.
Yeah, there are 2 key fumbles that he ended up losing, but overall an okay fantasy performance for him.
Kind of saved it with those receptions.
Yeah, Chargers 6 seed right now. They have the tiebreaker, of course, over the Bengals since they just beat them. They face the Giants at home next week, so probably will win that ball game. And then they have a Thursday Night Football date with the Kansas City Chiefs.
And then, finishing out with Texans and Broncos. So I could see them winning, 2 or 3 of those games.
Yeah, they should be able to win at least 2 of the next 3. Then they got the Broncos and Raiders to finish out a couple divisional opponents. So I think the Chargers, if they win the games that they're supposed to win, probably split against the Broncos and Raiders at the end. They'll probably find themselves as one of the last wild card teams in there.
Yep. All right, moving on to the whatever it's called, the
champagne.
Pop the Four Locos, because the 2008 Lions can pop the Four Locos, because they always say the Dolphins can pop the champagne. Because no team is going to go winless in 2021, 2022
in the first season of the 17-game stretch, because the Lions beat the Vikings 29-27. It's been 364 days since they last won against the Bears last season.
Yes.
They end up breaking their 15-game losing streak.
So it would have been 300 a year since they won a game.
Exactly, but end up getting the victory over the Vikings, like I said, 29-27. And what a fitting team to get it over in the divisional opponent, the Minnesota Vikings,
who's literally probably having the biggest fall from grace right now. We'll get into the Vikings a little bit, but let's just talk the Lions' praises for now. We won't talk about what the Vikings did wrong. Let's talk about what the Lions did right. And they were playing inspired football. The tragedy that happened in Michigan, the team rallied around the shooting, what happened there, and Dan Campbell really got his guys going, Roach.
Yeah, that's what they were up for the majority of this ball game. They outscored the Vikings 20-0 in the second quarter. They were up 20-6 at halftime. Led 23-15 after 3, and then when the Vikings took the lead with less than 2 minutes to go, Jared Goff leads the team down the field for a game-winning touchdown on 4th and 2 as time's expiring. I don't know what the Vikings defender was doing. I mean, they had it all set up right where they were all lined up across the goal line, because obviously if they get a touchdown, then they win the ball game.
Yeah.
And the guy just kind of leaks back to the middle of the end zone, and Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up catching the 11-yard pass right in front as they're showing it on the background in the background on the TV for us.
I know, literally just falls back pretty much pops right in front of both corners. And
I don't know if the corner was thinking he was going to go for the back corner of the pylon, so he's or the back corner of the end zone, so he's trying to beat him there. But like I said, he just pretty much sat down right in front of the end zone, and Goff laid it right there on him and caught it right in front of him.
Yeah, short routes can work, especially when you're in the goal line. So Goff also played a great game. This is probably his best game of the year, despite 2 turnovers, 25 of 41. 296 yards with 3 touchdowns.
I think this was the first time that they had 3 touchdowns in a ball game since week 1 against the 49ers. Remember, they had that big comeback where they scored a bunch of touchdowns.
They played really well
half.
Towards the end. I guess you could say that was another good one for Goff, but despite the 2 turnovers, just played well. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 10 catches for 86 and a touchdown.
Yeah,
probably
going
to be picked up maybe if someone needs a last fantasy push. TJ Hawkinson, 4 for 49 and a touchdown. Kind of a consistent weapon for them. Like we said, the Lions finally snapped their losing streak. But let's get to the elephant in the room, and that is Mike Zimmer and the Vikings. And I think his days are done.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings, they're kind of like the Chargers and the Bengals, where they're kind of tough to gauge, where you have the...
Yeah, I was going to say, when we were talking about them, I was going to say that you can make a case for them being really good, but also really bad.
I was going to say, we always make fun of them as being the team that always finishes right around 500 every single year, but it's because they have games where they look so good and they beat these great teams, and then they have it where they play down to their opponents, and they did that today. I mean, Kirk Cousins, 30 of 40, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 1 turnover in the ball game. He looked great. Justin Jefferson was just catching like the chunk after chunk gain, 11 catches, 182 yards, had the touchdown to give them the lead late in the ball game.
And even Alexander Madison was decent in relief of Dalvin Cook. With 22 catches for 90 yards. I mean, rushes for 90 yards and a touchdown. So you can't he's always been a good plug and play guy for them.
Yeah, they did have a big loss early in the game with Adam Thielen left with an ankle injury. He's got a high ankle sprain. He's not going to be out there next week because they play Thursday Night Football against Pittsburgh. So that's the worst thing for an injury is having a short turnaround with less rest. So Adam Thielen, that's like a less than 5% chance that he'll be out there on Thursday night.
Well, I don't like Pittsburgh at all, but I would love them again. I love them against the Vikings this Thursday because they're coming off a win. Vikings are coming off a loss. I just think they have all the momentum,
Yeah, or it could be one of those things where because Pittsburgh was a huge underdog in their ball game, Minnesota is not going to be underdog in this one. This could honestly be one where everyone's like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be a Pittsburgh game, and then Minnesota ends up winning.
Yeah, it's any given Sunday, as they say, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the Vikings right now are on the outside looking in, currently 9th place in the NFC, one game out of the wild card spot. They've got that Thursday Night Football game against Pittsburgh. They travel to Chicago to face the Bears on Monday night. Then they play the Rams at home. They're going to Green Bay on Sunday Night Football, then finish out with the Bears. So a very tough schedule for them on the back end, including three primetime games, which we know Kirk Cousins always struggles in primetime.
Yeah, their gaffes are going to be on full display, which will be fun to watch as Falcons fans, because I feel like the Vikings have always been kind of intertwined with the Falcons in terms of franchise bad luck. So that'll be fun. But next, moving on to kind of a gross game in the Giants versus Dolphins.
Yeah, not very fun
on paper. Gross on paper.
The Dolphins won this game 20-9, but just a lot of field goals overall in the ball game. The Dolphins, though, improved to 6-7, now on a 5-game win streak after their terrible start to the season. Giants fall to 4-8. Tua was good once again in this ball game. He's had a nice stretch of ball games. 30 of 41, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. Usually doesn't do anything flashy, but just with how the Dolphins defense has been playing of late, only allowing 55 points during their 5-game win streak. He really doesn't need to do much in terms of getting them points on the board because of how well the defense has been.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to sing Tua's praises for a little bit. He's the guy that a lot of us were saying that if he doesn't play right, this is his chance is over.
A lot of people, including us, doubted him going into this season.
Yeah, no, even after a few games in the season, we were all right, we gave him a little bit of a chance, and now he kind of fell off. He got that injured, and we saw the Brissett days back in week 4 or 5 around there.
Yeah, oh man, that was a lot of fun. That was right in the middle of the Dolphins losing streak.
And we thought this team was going to be one of the worst teams, but they just have been playing really well. And I know you say the defense has been playing well, but you got to give the praises to Jalen Waddle as well.
We talked about it on the last show, how he's looked like a veteran in the league, but once again leading this team receiving-wise, 9 catches for 90 yards. Really no one else of note in a game where they only had 297 yards of total offense. Gesicki had a couple of nice catches. Devontae Parker was back off IR. He had a decent ball game, but overall it was just Tua getting a couple of touchdowns for him, and then the defense holding strong against the Giants. Pretty pedestrian offense.
I will say, after playing... you play the Panthers offense, and now you play the Giants offense. You're going to make your defense look a little bit better than they may be. They still have maybe 1 or 2 tests left with the Titans and the Patriots, because they do have a very easy next 2 games.
Yeah, they have a bye coming up, and then they play at home against the Jets, and then they are at the Saints for Monday Night Football. Can you flex out Monday Night Football games? Because this might be a game that gets flexed out on Monday night.
I mean, I guess. The Saints, everyone
the Saints
thought...
haven't won in,
Saints haven't been
5
watchable.
games.
I mean, the Dolphins are probably more watchable, but there's not going to be really many storylines compared to, tonight's Monday night and next week's Monday night game.
That's going to be another 20-9 ball game, the score for this one.
Yeah. For the Giants, Daniel Jones was not there due to his neck injury suffered against the Eagles, meaning Mike Glennon was getting the start, and you could put Mike White there and say that those were Mike White stats, and I would say, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Glennon...
23, 44, 187 yards, and a pick.
Yeah, and that's what getting evaluated after the game ends up getting diagnosed with a concussion.
Jake Fromm is next in line, the former Georgia product.
Yeah, that's what got picked up off the practice squad of the Bills last week. So Daniel Jones, they've kind of been very vague in terms of whether he's day-to-day, week-to-week, if he's going to play again this season. But apparently the early reports are saying that he's going to be out next week as well. Mike Glennon, obviously, with a head injury, probably going to be out next week also. Yeah. So Jake Fromm could be in line for his first career start, which, as a Giants fan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'd like to see Jake Fromm do well, even though we don't like Georgia. I just want to see a kid from, Georgia do well.
Yeah.
Like the state of Georgia, not like the University of Georgia, if that makes sense. But, I mean, just overall, this offense, they fire, what's his name?
Jason Garrett.
Whoever they replaced him with. I mean,
Freddie Kitchens, which I don't know if that's exactly an upgrade or more of like a lateral or.
I mean, Saquon, is their best weapon.
He has pretty much like one like fiery touch or fiery like reception run a game.
Yeah, and
17
he still
for
hasn't.
74.
He hasn't still looked like the part. I mean, their offensive line is absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram is. He was their best weapon, and he wasn't even that good.
Yeah, Kenny Golladay had like 3 catches early, then he went out with a rib injury. It's like none of their receivers can ever stay healthy. Tony and Shepard were out once again in this game. They only had 250 yards of total offense. I mean, it's what you expect from like a Mike Glennon-led offense.
Yeah, and just an overall terrible performance. I think the Giants are going down, even after they beat a decent Eagles team. So
yeah, I mean, they could play spoiler in their division or maybe against some of the last teams they play, but at 4-8, once again, kind of like the Bears, where they're not like mathematically eliminated, but they're pretty much out of the playoffs.
Yes. All right, and let's go to the other New York team. And then just another. You said this was probably the ugliest matchup in terms of uniforms.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was deceiving because like the Jets were wearing their all-black uniforms with green helmets, like, the Eagles usually have their all-black uniforms. And then the Eagles were in their white uniforms with the green helmets, so, like, you thought...
Jets,
you thought it was vice versa. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of, like, the Kelly green, so...
No, I think certain green can look good in football. Like, I like Michigan State's green, I like Baylor's green, but, like, Eagles and Jets green aren't as good.
And a lot of people didn't like with the Jets like altering their uniforms and like logo a couple years ago too. So it was not easy on the eyes in this ball game, but it actually started out as a very like offensive heavy game as both teams scored touchdowns in their first 3 possessions. So you thought you were gonna have like a huge high scoring game. Kind of slowed down towards the back half, but the Eagles ended up getting the victory 33-18 in this one.
Yeah, and that's credit to Jalen Hurts actually not playing. It's credit to Gardner Minshew. Our boy Minshew Mania comes back. He's kind of the story of the season for the Eagles right now. Shows up, in his usual crazy outfit.
Yeah, he was in like a bomber jacket. Like he had his typical like handlebar mustache and everything.
He's playing the part that he needs to, and it just seems like it works in Philly, and it really worked for him in a performance that really could get him, paid next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking about it with a friend earlier. I was like, Minshew could be the guy, like, especially with this type of performance, could at least go to one of these teams that could be looking for a quarterback to have a chance to be like a spot starter for them or at least compete for like that number 1 quarterback spot.
Yeah, what it reminds me of is like, I don't know why, but Taylor Heineke, like him and Minshew,
that's what my friend brought up. He's like, I would rather have him starting with the Washington football team right now than Heineke.
I think they're pretty comparable though. Like they're both kind of smaller dudes, not great passers who can get it done with their feet. I say he's not a great passer, but he's 20 of 25 with 242 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's what I kind of compared it to Nick Foles, where it's like you put him as the backup, like he might show up for a couple games, but I don't know if you want him as like your starter long term because then you'll start to see maybe some flaws in his game and some rougher performances. We saw that kind of in the back end of his career in Jacksonville last year.
Maybe that was just the setting in Jacksonville, though. Let's think about that.
Yeah, you look at Jacksonville's football team this year.
Maybe he didn't have these guys around him, and let's see what guys he had around him and hit this game as Miles Sanders was doing a lot of the groundwork for them. 24 carries, 120 yards.
Yeah, they kept it up on the ground as they've been doing over the past couple games. Miles Sanders having a great game. Kenny Gainwell, 54 yards and a rushing touchdown. Also had 5 receptions. And Dallas Goedert was an absolute beast. 6 for 105 and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, most of those stats coming in the first half of their ball game.
Yeah, I'd say this is Goddard's best game of the season. Finally delivers on, promise that we've been looking for. Big performance. Tight ends can be such boom or bust, and this was finally a boom for him. But honestly, the Eagles' offense looked great with Gardner Minshew, but I still think that Hurts is the guy going forward for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are going into their bye, but Sirianni already came out and said that once they come back in week 15, it would be against Washington football team that Jalen Hurts going to be back out there and the starter. But I mean, like we were saying, this performance by Minshew is at least good enough to get him looked at.
Yeah, this is the Matt Flynn game. This is the Matt Flynn game, Roach. I don't know if you remember the throwback.
Or like Chase Daniel or something like that. Like
the Colt McCoy game. You know, Colt's going to get paid for his 2 performances in Arizona.
Exactly. You got to perform good enough where you can get some backup quarterback money or maybe even a chance to start. But the Eagles are right on the outside of the playoffs at 6-7. They're in 8th place.
And a favorable schedule for them.
Yeah, they play all divisional opponents to finish out the season. They got the Washington football team twice and then 2 home matchups versus the Giants and the Cowboys. So 3 of their last 4 are at home. They've got the bye week coming up now, which is good. Miles Sanders re-aggravated his ankle injury, so kind of a perfect time for him. Gives Jalen Hurts another week to get healthy as well. So kind of beneficial to have that late bye for them now and see if they can maybe make a run at the Cowboys in the division.
Yeah, I really don't think they should be a team that should be in the playoffs just based on like talent wise.
Yeah.
I think they, because I think that'd be spoiling a little bit. I still am in the group that the 7th wild card spot is just a terrible idea. Whoever team is going to get steamrolled by whoever.
It's kind of like the 1-8 matchup in the NBA playoffs where very rarely you might see like the 8 seed end up winning, but
maybe even more an extreme of like the 1-16 and then college basketball.
Yeah.
Like this is just. It's not going to be. It's just kind of a waste because it messes up the draft. It's going to mess up some teams' drafting stock because they got that extra spot. So let's talk about the Jets, who will probably be drafting very high.
I mean, they got the loss, but Zach Wilson arguably had like the best game of his career.
Yeah, you could say that. Still sacked a bunch. And,
it was one of his better games at least. As he had 226 passing yards, he had 2 touchdowns. Had an interception. He actually had 3 touchdowns in this ballgame. He had a rushing touchdown as well.
He had his token interception, though. You got to have his.
Yeah, and it was a pretty bad one as he overthrew his guy by about 10 yards. And Elijah Moore, the other rookie, actually having another great performance. 6 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown for him as well. But they've continued to have kicking woes as they waived Matt Amendola, their old kicker. They signed this dude, Alex Kessman, who I showed it to you. I was like, I've never heard of this dude. He ends up missing the first 2 extra points on their first 2 touchdown drives. And then I saw earlier today they signed Eddie Pinheiro, so Kessman's career with the Jets probably lasted 1 game.
Oh, gosh. Imagine playing for the Jets for 1 game.
Yeah, that's
and sucking.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, but they've had a kicking carousel just like a bunch of teams in the league, and that's why they ended up with a weird score of 18 points in this one.
Watch, the Jets are gonna try to draft that punter from
San Diego State. Draft him in like the first round with their top 5 pick.
Yeah.
But the Jets falling to 3-9 on the season. Excuse me. They not yet at 10 losses like this next team that we'll talk about. The Houston Texans falling at home to the Indianapolis Colts in very ugly fashion with a goose egg on the scoreboard, 31-0. And the Colts, I mean, really didn't look flashy in this ballgame. It's more that the Texans were just so bad and the Colts have such a good defense that that's really what did it in for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts defense played great. I forgot the guy's name on the Colts quarterback had 2 picks of Tyrod Taylor. And just, you got to talk about Jonathan Taylor, the other Taylor.
Not related.
Yeah, had 32 carries for 143 yards, 2 TDs. That's just Jonathan Taylor numbers, just leading the league.
Yeah, it's a typical day at the office for him now.
Yes. Did have a fumble, but that was early on in the game.
No, it was very late in the game when it was pretty much already decided, so it wasn't much of a factor. And I found the stat where the Colts are 7-0 when he's got 100 rushing yards, so that's obviously been the recipe for their success, and he's had a great season, so it makes sense why they win. When he does well, we mentioned how good the defense has been. They've got 29 takeaways this season. That's leading the NFL. They had 2 more in this one. Carson Wentz just kind of putting up average numbers. He
Not
hasn't
even
really
like average, like below average there.
Once again, he really hasn't had to do much. Only passed the ball 22 times, 158 yards, and had 1 touchdown. Michael Pittman, 6 catches for 77 yards, also had 33 rushing yards. So a great performance from him as their wide receiver 1. But the Colts, after their rough start, they're now above 500 for the first time this season at 7-6, but still on the outside of the playoffs because of the tough AFC. They're in ninth place right now, half game out of the wild card. They've got their bye coming up as well before they have a home matchup with the Patriots, go to Arizona for the Cardinals, home matchup with the Raiders, and then finish out in Jacksonville.
I said they got oof, and then they got okay.
Yeah, so a bye week to prepare for two tough matchups, and then it kind of gets easier over their last two games.
Yeah, and their defense can probably keep them in all these games. Cards might be hard, that offense, though, but I think they can keep them in all of them. And really, the Colts are setting themselves up for nice. I mean, if they were in the NFC, they would be pretty much set in stone in the playoffs. They'd
be like one of the first wild card teams. So because they're in the AFC at 7-6, they're on the outside looking in. But definitely need to win one of those two games against the Patriots or the Cardinals to stay in contention. So
yeah, and then for the Texans, we really don't have much to mention.
141 yards of total offense, so you can see how much they struggled in this one.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor only passed for 45 yards. He injured his wrist in the ball game. I think this might be the last that we see of Tyrod Taylor in a Texans uniform. Davis Mills came in, and he wasn't any better, threw for 49 yards, but I think they might just try and get him some reps for the rest of the season and just have him start the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think they're gonna just be going out. I don't know who's the guy, like Thibodeau or Hutchinson. First overall, there's not really a quarterback. Maybe Pickett. I don't know.
Yeah, they might
really define themselves. So there's really no one to tank for like last year with tanking for Tua.
And we still don't know with Deshaun Watson what's going on with him, if he's going to be playing next season.
It's going to be an ugly few more years for the Texans until they can get anything right. And who knows even if they even have their first pick, because I know they still have a few outstanding trades picks that they have to give. And then the only other person of note for them was, Brandon Cooks, who pretty much had 54 yards total.
Yeah, he had 38 receiving yards and a 16-yard carry.
I think he's still their only offensive viable person, but just another bad performance for them. When Davis Mills is playing significant minutes, you're not going to be very good.
Yeah, I mean, when you're losing to the Jets and then you play against a Colts team, you can really show by a 31-0 score
but
how bad the Texans
somehow
are.
You can beat the Titans, you know?
Any given Sunday, like you were saying, Stein. But let's hop into the 4:05 games. The first one we'll talk about is the Washington football team facing off against the Las Vegas Raiders. Washington football team moves to 500, 6-6 on the season. They get a game-winning field goal from the newly acquired Brian Johnson. He was the Saints kicker earlier this season. Joey Sly got injured last week, so they had to get a new kicker, but they get a 48-yard field goal for the win over the Raiders, who they fall to 6-6 now in the season.
Yeah, and then Taylor Heineke playing pretty decent. I guess a pretty Taylor Heineke-esque stat line. 23 of 30, almost a hair under 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, but similar, he seems to turn the ball over at least once a game, so he did get an interception.
He honestly, I was watching this game, he could have had 4 or 5 interceptions in this ball game. There were so many where it's just a hair away from getting picked off.
Yeah, Antonio Gibson played well, 23 attempts for 88 yards rushing the ball, and then a nice little PPR deal with 5 catches for 23 with a touchdown.
Yeah, no J.D. McKissick in this ballgame. Wendell Smallwood was their backup running back.
He kind of took the McKissick position with the receiving the ball. Logan Thomas in his is this his second or
this was his second game back from injury.
Second game back, unfortunately. He did have a nice performance, 3 for 48 and a touchdown, but left the game with a knee injury, and it's looking like this is going to be the end. It hasn't said that this is the end, but I'm feeling this is the end.
They originally thought it was going to be a torn ACL or MCL, and he was going to be out for the season, but then after some initial testing, they said it might not be season-ending, so definitely going to miss a couple weeks, but with only 5 games left in the season.
He might miss 3, so that's...
This is a guy that missed so many games with a hamstring injury earlier this season. Like we said, he just came back, so just demoralizing for him to once again be back on the shelf. Terry McLaurin, a bad game for him, only 3 catches for 22 yards, but Washington football team still gets the victory. They're the 6th seed right now in the NFC at 6-6, so 7-6, and the AFC gets you 9th place, 6-6, and the NFC gets you 6th place.
Yeah.
They've won 4 straight after they lost 4 in a row to get their record back up to 500. They also finish out with all divisional opponents in the NFC East. They play the Cowboys twice, the Eagles twice, and then they go to the Meadowlands to play the Giants. So they've only had one divisional game so far this season.
That is interesting that they still have to play two teams twice. They haven't even played them once.
Yeah, so I guess you could say they're still kind of mathematically in it with the division if they win both those games against the Cowboys.
I mean, we know what the NFC East can be, and I think it's going to be it's a new team every year, and this is the Cowboys' turn. It seems, but we've seen stranger things. Wild cards are also still open for them, but who's probably not open for it, and that's the Raiders. Even though they are at 500 at 6-6, I think they still just keep trending wrong.
Yeah, see, they're in 10th place right now, so 4 spots behind in the different different conference.
And Carr was not great, but he also wasn't terrible. 28 of 38, 249 yards, missing a touchdown though. All touchdowns were scored on the ground. As Josh Jacobs, 13 carries for 52 yards with a rushing touchdown, 9 for 38 catching. That's kind of interesting.
Usually not known as a PPR back.
Yeah, he's not a PPR guy.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake actually ended up breaking his ankle in this ballgame, got rolled up on while he was getting tackled. He's out for the season, so Jacobs kind of took on that bell cow role.
He kept asking why they kept using Kenyon Drake, I remember.
Yeah, and then Hunter Renfrow, 9 catches for 102 yards. No Darren Waller, so he really stepped up as kind of like the number one pass catcher.
I had to throw in Foster Morneau's in there.
He only had 1 catch in the ballgame for 34 yards. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was better than, it was one of those last minute, oh crap, I forgot to start a tight end.
Yeah, no, I threw him in a DFS lineup because he played well in a spot start when Waller missed earlier on in the season and just did not follow up with a good performance in this one.
Yeah, so the Raiders, like we said, are in 10th place, and some tough matchups where they have KC, at the Browns, Broncos, Colts, and Chargers. They could go 0-5 potentially.
Yeah, I mean, once again, that's another tough schedule to finish out where you got 5 teams at 500 or better, and this is a Raiders team that's been trending in the wrong direction. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games.
Yeah. All right, one of the other 405 starts was the Jags going to LA. That's just a hard matchup. That's just a hard sell for them.
Yeah, we talked about this being a get-right game for the Rams since they had lost 3 games in a row, and they definitely got right in this one. 37-7 was the final score. The Rams outscored the Jags 21-0 in the second half. It was only 16-7 at halftime, but they really stepped it up in the second half and ran away with it. Matt Stafford got back on track, 295 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Remember, that had been a big bugaboo for him recently. Had 3 straight games with a pick 6. Darrell Henderson was active in this game but did not see any field as he was dealing with a quad injury. Sony Michel, 24 carries, 121 yards, and a touchdown, so filled in nicely for him. Cooper Kupp had a Cooper Kupp stat line, 8 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown, 4 for 99, and the touchdown coming in just the third quarter alone.
Yeah, he's back to that Stafford connection. Van Jefferson played well, 6 catches for 41 and a touchdown, and gave OBJ a token touchdown.
Odell Beckham with a 1-yard touchdown catch as well to kind of salt away the victory. The Rams are 5th seed right now, still behind the Cardinals in the NFC West. Speaking of the Cardinals, we mentioned earlier, they go to Arizona on Monday Night Football next week, and then they have a home matchup with Seattle, to Minnesota, to Baltimore, and home versus San Francisco. So a tougher schedule for them as well to finish out their season.
Yeah, and unfortunately for the Jags, Trevor, just not great.
Sadly, this is like a pretty par for the course in terms of Trevor's stat line this season.
Yeah, I mean, just not looking good completion-wise or yardage-wise. 16 of 28, 145 yards. Just still hasn't had like a breakout game.
I mean, no turnover, but also no touchdowns.
That's true, but no touchdown to really save and really put him over that top. The rush game was just ineffective as well with Carlos Hyde and what's his name,
James Robinson.
Only 24 yards a pop, both of them, and both had a fumble. Hyde did save his day, but, I mean, who's really starting Carlos Hyde?
Exactly. And then Laquan Treadwell, for the second week in a row, leading the team in receiving, 4 catches for 62 yards. He's had a team-high 13 targets over the last 2 games. I mean, I know they've been decimated by injuries to their pass catchers, but, Laquan Treadwell should not be leading a team in receptions for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and if y'all are watching the Monday night game right now, the Bills are punting into the wind, and I'm going to see a...
Actually, I was going to say it went through the end zone, so...
Yeah, well, the original kickoff, I don't know if you saw it, he booted it, and it went into, like, the 5th row of the stands. I don't think I've ever seen a kickoff go into the stands like that.
We might see a record-breaking field goal tonight, so if someone gets an opportunity...
Punts tonight as well. Let's go to the 4:25 games, Roach. I should stop getting distracted. The Ravens going to the Steelers, and probably the biggest surprise, the biggest upset of the weekend.
Yeah, a very exciting game. The Steelers end up winning a thriller 22-19 as the Ravens go for 2 after getting a touchdown at the end of the ball game. Harbaugh ends up dialing it up, doesn't want to play for overtime, goes for 2, doesn't get it. It was a pass from Lamar that it was just out of reach of Mark Andrews. It tipped off of his hand where if it was maybe an inch closer in, he would have been able to make a one-handed catch, but it falls incomplete, and Pittsburgh ends up getting the victory, really saving their playoff chances. They improved to 6-5-1 on the season.
The Steelers are, again, add them to that list of the Chargers, the Bengals, the Vikings. It's like one week they look like a complete ass, and then the next week they look pretty decent.
It's just Mike Tomlin, when he's an underdog, he always finds a way to end up getting his guys amped up and finding a way to get a victory. I mean, granted, it comes in a way where they had a chance to lose the game with a 2-point conversion because it happened with 12 seconds left, so it would have taken a miracle for them to get into field goal range and everything, but just a win for them, like I said, to stay in playoff contention. Ravens falling to 8-4 on the season, and they're once again still in it. They've got obviously an uphill battle, but
and it's gonna take all hands on deck for them. And Big Ben, and after a really bad performance in Week 12, a good Week 13, only 10 incompletions, Roach, 236 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Played well, but there are musings that this could be his last year as a Steeler. I heard some news coming out.
I thought it was funny that this was such a big headline because I feel like that was kind of the writing on the wall anyway.
This was a little bit of a given.
He's 39 years old. He hasn't been performing well.
Exactly. Now on to the Ravens side of the football. The Ravens just... a performance they want to forget.
Their offense has been very poor over the last 4 games. I mean, they've been able to get some victories, don't get me wrong, but it's just not been the well-oiled machine that we're used to. You could account that to the running back injuries, but I mean, Lamar 23 of 37, 253 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Once again, leading the team on the ground, 8 carries for 55 yards, but was sacked 7 times in this ball game.
Yeah, and we see more mobile quarterbacks get sacked more often because they are trying to fish out
just
the pocket
trying to make plays
so many times. But just another just forgettable performance, and we can really give him the injury bug award, for the year. Just so many offensive and defensive injuries.
A lot of defensive injuries. Marlon Humphrey now out for the season with a torn pec. That's their third DB out for the season now.
And that seems like a really painful injury, a torn pec.
It was on. He was trying to make the tackle on Deontay Johnson on the go-ahead touchdown. He kind of hit him with his shoulder, and I just started grabbing right at his pec afterwards.
Yeah, you knew it. It wasn't his fault. He just hit bad. Just literally just a freak thing for him. Mm-hmm. But just, they're kind of their weapons for. I guess you could put weapons in quotes for the Ravens right now because Hollywood Brown 5 for 55.
He's had a couple of down games in a row. Mark Andrews 4 for 50.
Yeah, who seems to be getting force-fed the ball, and it's just not working out for Lamar.
Devontae Freeman, though, surprisingly, has kind of been steady as their RB1. 52 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown, then 5 catches for 45 yards. That's some, I don't want to say vintage Falcon like Devontae Freeman, but
he was never the best pass-catching back, but he wasn't a terrible. He was
serviceable.
Pass. Yeah, he wasn't a terrible pass. He was a very average pass-catching back is a great way to say that. Mm-hmm. But just the offense for the Ravens over the past 4 games, only 5 touchdowns. That's Falcon-esque. Just not looking good, not creative enough, just kind of getting snuffed out. Lamar's not playing well, and just kind of a team that I still think is good, but just needs to fix something if they're going to contend with the Bengals and the Browns.
Yeah, and right now they're...
And maybe even the Steelers now, too.
Right, they're still first place in their division. They're the 3 seed right now. They have a couple of divisional matchups. They go to Cleveland next week. Remember, that's the Cleveland had Ravens bye, then Ravens again. They have a home date with the Packers. That's going to be a tough matchup. Ooh. to Cincinnati,
Oof.
home against the Rams, home against the Steelers. So,
wow, this is a killer.
I mean, you got to credit it to the AFC North being tough, a couple divisional opponents in there, but even like the non-divisional opponents, like the Rams, Packers, like you finish out with those guys in your schedule, like that's definitely going to be a tough way to finish out their season.
Yeah. So just it's going to be a hard run for them. But let's go to the last of the 4 o'clock slate game road and a divisional matchup. Another one, we have the Niners going to Seattle and the Seahawks winning.
Yeah, we talked about the got a little choked up there.
I need some more water.
But the Seahawks, being the second worst team in the NFC going into this week, end up getting a home victory, the first victory since Russ returned from that finger injury against a red-hot San Francisco team, who now falls to 6-6, back to 500 on the season. And the Seattle defense, which has struggled mightily this season, held San Fran's offense scoreless in the second half. San Fran was up 23-21 at halftime, so credit the Seahawks defense to really stepping up. San Fran had a turnover on downs from the 3-yard line with 22 seconds left. They were trying to get a game-tying touchdown to force overtime. It was really down to the wire because it was this game and the Ravens-Steelers game. Like, both teams were going for their game-winning or game-tying drives like at the same time. So red zone had to like keep hopping back and forth to get both of them. So it was a very wild finish to the 4 o'clock window.
Yeah, and for Seattle, Russ finally looks like vintage Russ. Still not as many pass yards as you would want, though, but 30 for 37. Good completion percentage, only 7 incompletions, 2 touchdowns, good. But what also sticks out again is an interception and sacked 4 times.
The interception is tough because it was Gerald Everett, who we'll talk about, may have had like the worst performance ever from like a receiver, because he ended up causing 3 turnovers. He had 2 fumbles, and then he was the reason why Russ had the interception. It was kind of like the Cole Kmet thing, where he was catching the ball and then he ended up like throwing it up into the air when he was bobbling it.
Easy.
And they just picked it off right by the goal line. But
and then another forgettable performance, as you mentioned, beside Everett. Adrian Peterson in his first game with Seattle, 11 carries for 16 yards.
That's pretty much the stat line we're getting from Adrian Peterson now. Did have a touchdown, which he tied Jim Brown for 10th. He either tied or broke Jim Brown's touchdown record for their career inside the top 10 now, but in his first game with Seattle, like I said, this is pretty much the stat line you're getting from Adrian Peterson these days. Just as a goal line back.
And the other backs that they use, 23 yards for 23 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. But that's also Travis Homer and Rashad Penny. So
Homer did have a 73-yard touchdown on a fake punt on their first possession of the ball.
That was kind of the play of the game for them, was the fake punt. Just took off as soon as he got the ball. Looked awesome for them. But Alex Collins out with a core injury, so the running back room for Seattle just not great. But finally, the receiving core is starting to look like, former, like how they used to be.
It's crazy when, like, Russ is decent, that the receivers actually look pretty good, too. Like, Tyler Lockett, 7 for 68 and a touchdown. DK, there's been a lot of stir around him because he only had 1 catch in their last performance on Monday Night Football. He had 5 catches for 60 yards, so not great, but definitely better than the 1 for 9 where he got his 1 catch in the last couple minutes of the ball game. It snaps a 3-game losing streak for Seattle, and once again, not mathematically eliminated, but are definitely facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, it seemed like definitely Carroll is getting on the hot seat as things are kind of getting stale in Seattle for him. Maybe a change of scenery is needed overall, but Carroll saves his job, and really, Russ kind of probably taking a little while to get the rust off. Not trying to really make any kind of pun there, but just trying to get back to the swing of things. And you see what I said, swing of things? He used to play baseball.
You got them all lined up today.
I know, I'm doing good. But another guy who seems to be always coaching for his job, at least this season, is Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, so Seattle breaks their 3-game losing streak. This loss for the 49ers breaks their 3-game winning streak. Jimmy G in this ball game, 20 of 30, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. George Kittle, with no Deebo Samuel, had an absolutely monster game, was definitely Jimmy G's favorite target. 9 catches, 181 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had over 100 yards in both those touchdowns in the first half, so just a monster performance
best
from
tight
him.
end easily of the week, and maybe probably the best pass catcher of the week as well.
Yeah, between like him and Justin Jefferson, definitely. Elijah Mitchell, 22 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown.
Good performance for him.
He's in concussion. He's in concussion protocol actually this week, so
I was going to say he is turning into the number one, because San Fran uses 20 different running backs.
Yeah, you know how Shanahan loves to just find that diamond in the rough. Remember all the hype on Trey Sermon because he was the 3rd round running back. This is their 6th round running back that's turning into the bell cow. So like you were saying, Stein is just really rounded into being that lead guy for Shanahan. The 49ers, even with the loss, they have the final seed right now in the wild card, the 7 seed. They go to Cincinnati, have a home game versus Atlanta, go to Tennessee for a Thursday night football matchup.
Weird matchup.
Yeah, home versus Houston, and then they finish out on the road versus the Rams. So a couple of easy non-divisional games.
Only one more divisional for them.
Yeah, whereas what is it, the Eagles or Washington football
Eagles
team
and
has
Washington
all
both backlogged with
all divisional opponents.
Yeah,
they
Falcons
got
still have I think 2 more divisional games too. Just a lot of teams finish with their division, but it's the Niners are just weird like that. And Shanahan, similar to Carroll, I think is definitely on the hot seat. I think things are getting stale for them as well. Yeah, despite that run that they just went on.
Yeah, and it's definitely hard to grade just with them being in a tough division. But yeah, I mean, you expect success when you have the rosters that they have. So let's bump into the last game, the Sunday night football game, and it was kind of a snooze fest, Stein. The Chiefs and the Broncos. Chiefs improved to 8-4 on the season. 5-game win streak that they're in right now. 22-9 victory over the Broncos, falling to 6-6. And we keep mentioning how we thought the Chiefs' offense, they're eventually going to get right. But really a down game for Mahomes and company, and it was once again the defense. That's been the big story during this win streak, is they haven't allowed more than 17 points during this 5-game win streak, and they've allowed single digits in 3 of those 5 games.
Yeah, the defense, after starting off so bad, and everyone was talking about putting the Chiefs 6 feet under, to kind of declaring them dead with the resurgence of the Chargers in their division. The Chiefs' defense has come to play, and we've seen guys like Sorensen play a lot better. He had a pick last night, a pick 6 at that too.
Yeah, that was really what put it over the top, made it a 22-9 ball game. So
yeah, really kind of finished it up. But the Broncos, defensively were good as well. So kind of a defensive, a low-key defensive battle, even though the game, 31 combined points. That's kind of, that's relatively low scoring.
It was a lot of field goals. You see, obviously, there's 1 defensive touchdown as well. So just 2 offensive touchdowns, 1 for each team. Pat Mahomes, 15-29, only 184 passing yards. Didn't have a passing touchdown, had 1 rushing, though. And then another turnover for him, an interception. His receivers were not helping him out last night. There was 5 or 6 drop passes.
Yeah,
Byron Pringle was absolutely awful.
Yeah, Tyreek was bad, too.
Yeah, his interception was a tip pass from Tyreek. So Kelsey and Tyreek combined for 5 catches for 49 yards.
That's good math.
Yeah, I was trying to
as a math expert.
trying to do it quickly in my head, but obviously, like I said, the defense stepping up, so they didn't really need them to have their A game. It was really the running backs were all their offense between Darrell Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They accounted for 162 rushing and receiving yards throughout the game. The rest of the team only accounted for 111, so it just showed how the 2 running backs were the majority of their offense, even though neither of them got a touchdown. The Chiefs, the 4 seed right now, they have a home matchup versus the Raiders next week. Then they go to Los Angeles to face the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. Home game versus the Steelers, at Cincinnati, and then at Denver. So 3 out of 5 games on the road to finish out their season, and a couple of tough non-divisional opponents.
It's weird to see 4 seed with a record of 8-4, Roach, just because that would be 1st or 2nd seed.
Well, that's and it's weird because all the division leaders are 8-4 right now in the AFC.
Oh, really?
Just with how it all shook out.
The tiebreakers. Mm-hmm. Interesting. But the Broncos, Teddy, a forgettable performance. 22 of 40, 257 yards, a touchdown, but 2 picks, including a pick 6.
Yeah, touchdown in garbage time as well.
Yeah, so they say that 1 touchdown coming in garbage time and just passing the ball, being down. Javonte Williams, though, with Melvin Gordon being out, he was a late scratch.
Part.
Yeah, he was a late kind of the day before, or maybe even the day of. I don't know if when they downgraded him.
I think it was on Saturday, but Javonte, 23 carries, 102 yards on the ground, and then 6 catches for 76 yards and a receiving touchdown as well. So really shows that, because Melvin Gordon's a free agent after this season, could show that Javonte can kind of handle a bell cow role. We've talked about how good the Chiefs defense is, and he was really the only guy that contributed for the offense of the Broncos.
Yeah, and with Melvin out, that just meant more was going to go to Williams, and he's quietly developing in an offense that, has left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, probably going to have a new quarterback next season.
Yeah,
Teddy's not going to be the long-term solution. Might even
have a new coach overall, too.
Yeah, with Fangio.
Yeah, the offense will get better for them. Defense, though, for the Broncos, I will say, has been playing well. And to have Pat Mahomes only get 15 completions against you, that's a win in itself.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's just where the offense couldn't really help you out in terms of scoring for themselves. Couldn't get out of its own way. But they're still at 6-6, one game out of the wild card spot. They go and face the Lions next week. The Lions, hot team, one-game winning streak.
The hottest team in football right now, 1-0.
Yeah, then they have the Bengals, the Raiders, Chargers, and Chiefs. So 3 divisional games to finish out their season. So definitely an uphill climb for them in the tough division.
I would say, Lions and Raiders are probably their easiest matchups. Then you got the 2 mystery teams, and then you got the guaranteed Chiefs.
Yeah, they pretty much would need to go into the second spot in their division to get a last wild card chance. But one last thing to mention from this game, the Chiefs have 12 straight wins versus the Broncos. Broncos haven't beat the Chiefs, and Peyton Manning was the quarterback back in 2015.
Wow, I think, I also saw that, that Pat Mahomes is undefeated against the Broncos. So he must have their number. It's like a Brady versus like the Jets kind of deal with them.
Yeah, exactly. But we actually picked all the same teams throughout this whole week.
I guarantee you, I did not look at anything.
The only game that we have different is this Monday Night Football game going on right now. You picked the Bills, I picked the Patriots. So we're both at 9-4 right now. 114, 62, and 1 overall on the season. We are very backlogged on our punishments. Don't worry, we will get to them. It's just because we haven't been filming our preview shows on Friday. That's when we film our punishments. So we will get those to you by the end of the season. But that will do it for this episode of the Couch Quarterbacks podcast.
We got a very great game to watch, y'all. It's 8-0 right now. Patriots ahead, going for 2 due to the adverse conditions. I think every team, when they score, if they score, I mean, the Patriots defense has been playing really well. Another booming punt, and did that hit off the...
I don't think it touched him, but I'm sure they'll go and review it.
That was like another 7. That was like a 70-yard punt.
Yeah, so we're going to see a lot of that with the windy conditions, and that's just December football for you. Get ramped up with that at the end of the regular season, and then obviously going into the playoffs.
Yeah, but guys, it's been fun, and it's been real, and Roach, you have anything else to say?
Yeah, no, that's it. Just be sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram at The Couch Quarterbacks. But for Andrew Roachford, that's Ben Steinberg, and we will see you guys on the flip